Call this zoning board of appeals meeting to order. Be patient with us tonight. We haven't met in 4 months because there's been nothing on the agenda, so we might be a little rusty at this. So before we begin, please be advised this open meeting may be broadcast live via WCAT and recorded for playback online. Video on demand, viewing at da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Attendees are reminded that by attending this meeting, your consent and your likeness and audio being used and rebroadcast by WCAT. You're being recorded tonight, folks. First order of business, we'd like to turn it over to Joe. He has an announcement regarding the MBTA Communities Act.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So next week on October 26th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to have another public forum. This will be kind of a design workshop, if you will. So folks will be able to give us feedback on how you want things to look in our proposed overlay district. So that'll be at 6:30 in the Stony Brook School Auditorium, again on October 26th.
And so, if you're reading about this online, it'll say MIC-MAC. It's not going to say MBTA Communities, it'll say MIC-MAC. All right, moving on. Draft meeting minutes from a Zoom call on August 16th. Does anybody have any additions, deletions, corrections? All we did was make one extension, I think. Seeing none, motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, first item is 4 Hildreth Street. Attorney Erickson is here representing the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Members of the board, for the record, Attorney Kevin Erickson on behalf of the applicant, here before you tonight seeking special permit relief relative to property located at 4 Hildreth Street to allow for the reconstruction of a non-conforming dwelling with a larger volume and/or area. 4 Hildreth is located, as this board's aware, in the RA zoning district. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot as to area and frontage. The existing structure at 4 Hildreth is non-conforming also as to front yard setback. It does conform to side and rear yard setback requirements in the RA zoning district. The residence itself is a 2-story, 3-bedroom, approximately 1,600 square foot home serviced by a cesspit. The home itself is in a severe state of disrepair both inside and out, and the cesspit is in failure. So the applicant's proposal is to raise the existing home and to reconstruct a new 3-bedroom home on the lot that would be serviced by a brand-new 3-bedroom Title V compliant system. The reconstructed home would also comply with the side and rear yard setbacks. It will continue to be non-conforming as to front yard. However, it will be less non-conforming in the sense that the existing structure is 24.8 feet from the property line. The closest this structure would be is 25.6 feet as proposed. So a little further away. It does have a larger area and volume, which is the need for the special permit relief. As our application suggests, this proposal would not result in a substantial detriment to the neighborhood. As mentioned, the house is in a severe state of disrepair, again, both inside and out. The character of the neighborhood, in our opinion, would be improved by the new construction. In addition, front yard setbacks, and this one is getting a little bit better, but front yard setback encroachments on Hildreth Street are not out of character. In fact, they're almost the norm. There's a lot of front yard encroachments on Hildreth Street. In addition, the failing cesspit would be fully replaced and brought to compliance under Title V standards. This is a benefit from an environmental, sanitary, and code compliance standpoint. There'll be no increase in services to the town. It's a like-kind exchange, 3-bedroom home to a new 3-bedroom home. Utilities are already in place, so there's no additional strain from that standpoint for the community. Tax base will slightly increase as the new construction home will necessarily be assessed higher than the present value of the existing house. In addition, the applicant is proposing to remove a non-conforming shed structure, which will bring the lot further into compliance. So it's our position that not only is this definitely not a substantial detriment, this proposal. It's actually a net benefit under the performance standards stated in the bylaw. So certainly here to answer any questions that the board has. We did submit plans that were revised as recently, I think, as last Friday, and submitted on Monday or Tuesday of this week, that address some of the staff comments to add additional details as to the height of the proposed structure versus existing and some of the other setback specifications.
Okay, so we didn't get those, correct, Joe?
We did get the plot plan. I don't recall seeing the architectural ones.
Well, the architectural plans were submitted with the initial application, and we put, I mean, the information that I think the board was looking for regarding height, we added to the table
Gotcha.
on the revised plot plans. So we put, you know, the height in a RA zone, maximum height is 35 feet. This proposal, I think, is 28 feet. The existing is 25 feet. That's now noted on the plan. And we also noted the existing square footage and the footprint area of the proposed new house on the revised plan.
Can you tell us old versus new?
Sure, so the existing total square footage of the house is about 1,600 square feet. The proposed new structure is about 2,800 square feet, more or less.
And footprint size?
Footprint size, I think, is, I have that plan here. About 1,930 square feet.
Okay. Any idea how big that shed was?
That shed is 10 by 12, 120 square feet.
Okay.
Look at that math, for a lawyer.
You paid attention.
Yeah, we deal in multiples of tens and hundreds and.
Okay, all right, here's the plan. Does the board have any questions regarding this?
We received several emails from Joe today that were kind of late notice, correct? Tonight?
We received some comments towards the end of the day today from a concerned abutter, particularly concerned about the scale of the proposal compared to the existing home, and about some of the, I guess, the architecture of the proposed home in comparison to some of the surrounding properties.
And this one is just recent from Owens,
That's what I'm referring to, yeah, that
and
one.
it's kind of, I mean, I don't know, it's a rather lengthy document that obviously I haven't had a chance to review,
Sure, yeah, it did just come in at 4 o'clock today.
so.
That's the short version, I guess, is
Yeah,
the
that-
concerns about the architectural
And I
side.
understand that the criteria about deadlines and that sort of thing, but just kind of scanning this very, very quickly as I saw it 5 minutes ago, it seems like there's some few substantial issues here that.
Yeah, there was a lot of
we have
concern
time to
about the
go through
historic
this,
character.
Or we just kind of pass by it, but it seems like a different twist to it. I don't know if you've had.
Perhaps there's someone in the audience to speak to that. I don't know if the writer, are they here tonight?
Well, it's, I don't.
You're not the Owens,
No, but I worked with Gene on the letter.
Okay.
so before we get to that, let me ask, so David?
Just to follow up Jim's comments, it seems to me pretty straightforward, is there ought to be a continuance to digest the content of this letter, if we're gonna take it seriously. Because it is, it is in depth.
It is, I think it's, again, I just looked at it very quickly, it looks like a well-written document that.
Mr. Chairman,
Should have some time to.
respectfully, our application was filed some time ago. Notice was in the appropriate Westford Eagle. Notice went out to abutters some weeks ago. We received this evening when I walked into the building.
So did I.
If the tack that neighbors can take to force a continuance is just to submit something at the 11th hour, then everybody will do it. I think what we should do is probably go through this letter, because I don't necessarily agree that there's anything substantive in here as it pertains to the performance criteria for the special permit. I had a chance to glance at it quickly, and what they're talking about is the scope of the dwelling versus the existing. But frankly, I mean, let's look at your performance criteria, right? Are there houses similar to that in the neighborhood? The neighborhood, number one, is not just Hildreth Street. The neighborhood is the neighborhood writ large. Number two, there are in fact houses, 2,800 square feet for a three-bedroom home by modern standards is not grossly oversized. And you know, this lot is 10,000 square feet. It's not exactly a post stamp. In Westford, that's a small lot, but in a lot of communities, that's a very common-sized lot. So the scale of this house, just by virtue of the fact that we're meeting the other setback requirements and actually reducing the front yard setback encroachment, clearly shows that the scale of this house is not substantially detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. And that's the standard here, not whether somebody likes the architecture that's being proposed by the owner of this property, but rather whether or not it's substantially detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. And if this board were to do that based on the appearance of the architecture and/or a 2,800 square foot three-bedroom home, which by today's standards, I would suggest very different than 1930 standards, granted, is right in line with market, then I would say that would be the definition of arbitrary and capricious. And I know the board here has dealt with applications similar to this in the past, and certainly has treated them accordingly with, you know, a focus on these standards. And the other thing that I would say is it's been suggested maybe in this letter that you could refurbish the existing house. The existing cesspit is in absolute failure. To put a new Title V septic, which Title V cannot be varied, that leach field in the back, that field in the back, is pushing that house box forward, that envelope forward, because of the setbacks from the septic. I would say that that's the main reason that you'll notice on our plans, our rear yard setback actually is further away than the existing structure, because the existing structure could not stand under current Title V setback requirements with that new system. And that cesspit is an absolute failure, when I tell you. And this is not the 1930s. Now we have to do this by today's standards. So there's no way of keeping that house the way that it is and redoing this three-bedroom septic system, number one. Number two, I would say that alone, just to get rid of that sanitary and that environmental concern of a failing cesspit, is a huge check in favor of this application. Not to mention, again, that this house is in a state of disrepair. We've been inside that house. We've had inspectors through that house, various different bodies looking at it, contractors looking at it. And what we've proposed to do is raise it, but we are going to reutilize the granite foundation, as has been done in other areas of Hildreth, for a wall in the frontage, so a portion of that structure will remain on the lot as a nice architectural feature similar to other places on Hildreth Street. So, but I do not necessarily agree that somebody filing a letter with this board at 4:30, regardless of its length, warrants a continuance, especially if, you know, really the gist of it is they don't like the appearance and they think it's too big, when I'm suggesting to you that you guys know the market today, 2,800 square foot, three-bedroom, it's not a big home.
So, does the board, anybody else on the board have questions, comments?
Where is the septic going?
In the rear of the property? I actually have, if the board would, I know it's not germane necessarily to this board's application, but I actually have a septic plan I could hand out through staff. That would be okay.
Thank you.
If you look, I guess it would be the southeasterly corner of that lot, you'll see a 20-foot minimum setback off of that leach field. That's pushing that house box forward quite a bit. And you can see where the existing structure would be absolutely encroaching on the setback requirements for that system.
Can the audience see the septic system?
I can give you my extra copy here.
Well, that's me, but I mean, there are
You
people.
can
here
pass
who
it
wanna
around
see
if they
this.
want to see it, or... In any event, it's, the reason it's not been submitted to this board as part of our application is because, as you know, that's a Board of Health plan. It's not part of the ZBA's purview. I'm providing it for informational purposes only tonight.
See this, Wes.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm
Okay. Anybody have any comment, question? Okay, I'll take some comments from the audience, either in favor or against. Mr. Jeffries, up to the microphone, please.
Bob Jeffries, 11 Boston Road. And just for the record, our house is 2,800 square feet. It's an abutter to an abutter, but it's on 5 acres. So there's some questions of scale here. But my comment is entirely about the orientation of the driveway, the depth of the driveway. We have a post office box, so we drive Hildreth 6 out of every 7 days. And when you hit that corner, you've got to look a number of ways. As you turn from Boston Road onto Hildreth, you've got that triangle sitting there. You have to look up the triangle to make sure somebody isn't coming down Boston Road. And you're also looking for traffic coming down Hildreth. The way this is set up, that driveway is virtually right at the corner. You can't see it until you're there, if you're coming up Hildreth from Boston Road. If they flip the plan, it actually makes the driveway a little deeper without changing the setbacks in the rear, but gives us a chance to actually see the driveway when we come around. Because you literally have to look in 3 separate directions in order to make that turn. And there's no yield there, there's really no traffic controls right at that triangle. And it seems to me that the whole thing can be flipped without affecting any of the setbacks, and it actually makes the driveway a little deeper if you look at where it would go to.
Isn't the current driveway in a similar position?
The current driveway is on, no, it's not there, it's on the other side. But you can't see the bottom of this site plan, but the current driveway runs right alongside that. And the driveway of the next house over is also right there. So you'd have 2 driveways where you can see them. The way it is now, we won't be able to see that driveway until we're right on top of it. And we're not looking that way. We're looking up to make sure nobody's coming down from Boston Road. That's my only comment.
Gentleman with the bow tie, come up to the microphone. Can we have your name for the record, please?
Good evening. Christopher Mulhern, number 3 Hildreth, right across the street from this property. We're a direct abutter. I'm an architect. I practice in Winchester, Massachusetts. I have an office that does residential, single, and multifamily projects, among other things. My issue here is I think that we can do a lot better on this site than this proposal. I think that in terms of substantially detrimental, that this type of developer home in the historic portion of Westford is substantially detrimental to the existing building. I also think that the de minimis reduction of the front yard setback is not an issue. In other words, I fully support fixing the septic system. I think there are many ways to do that. I don't think that that should be the tail that wags the dog here. I think this is actually a 4-bedroom house and not a 3-bedroom house. The space on the second floor that's marked as a recreation room has a full bath, toilet, sink, and shower. It's a closet and a door away from being another bedroom. So what we really need here for a 4-bedroom house is a 4-bedroom septic system. I don't think we have that, although I haven't had an opportunity to review the septic plan. So what I would say is that the best outcome, the highest and best outcome for this property in this portion historic portion of Westford is a building that respects the existing foundation, adds to the existing historic building in a way that is sensitive and doesn't double the size of the house. The record, the property card on this property lists the house size as 1,300 and some square feet, 1,339 I think it is. And we're talking about something that's almost twice as big on the same lot. I feel the house is too big for the lot. I feel that this board, by continuing and asking for some modifications to this plan, can get a better result than this for the town of Westford. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Thank you.
Orange coat, please.
Hi, I'm Wes Olson, 5 Boston Road, direct abutter on the fence behind. I guess my concern is more of a question, and I appreciate bringing the septic plan, but my concern is drainage and any method to contain that. When the house on 6 Hildreth went in, we had substantial drainage issues, a virtual flood going through the fence, which the builder was nice enough to address. But I would like some additional information and assurance that the existing drainage will not drain onto our property because it's already wet enough, as everyone knows, in the town center. My other question is where the sump is going to drain. I would prefer it to drain towards Hildreth and not towards my house. So understand, watching birds and animals go in and out of the house for the last 16 years, that there are issues inside, but I would like more information. So I'm withholding any approval or disapproval, but I would like more information on how the drainage will be handled before I would be satisfied with this. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Jean Roberts, 1 Hildreth Street, and I am also an architect. I agree that the home needs to be provided at 4 Hildreth, that a home needs to be provided. But the proposal is substantially detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. Per the Westford zoning bylaws, Article 3.6.7 says that if the structure has been abandoned for more than 2 years, all provisions of the new bylaws should take effect. This building has not been lived in for decades. Therefore, I would assume that it is now considered a non-buildable lot. As the acreage is 1/4 of the minimum allowed by the bylaws, the front setback and the length of frontage are only 1/2 of the minimum allowed. This application states that the new house will be in keeping with the neighborhood character and that the neighborhood has similarly undersized lots. I see one undersized lot along Hildreth Street, and that's over at 8. I also believe that the style of this house would be a detriment to the character of the street. The front mass is more than twice the front mass of the existing home along Hildreth Street. And therefore, I question the validity of either of those statements in the proposal. The application, I know Christopher mentioned the 3-bedroom septic system, and there are 4.5 bathrooms in this 3-bedroom quote-unquote house, plus 2 spaces which could easily be turned into bedrooms. One is the rec room and one is the office, which is sizable enough for another bedroom. Therefore, in the future, they may easily make this a 4 or even 5-bedroom house, and therefore the septic system will be undersized. The cover letter says that due to the need for this 3-bedroom conforming septic system, they need to move the house forward towards the road. I say that therefore the square footage of the house is too large for this size lot in the town of Westford. They have not mentioned whether they are keeping the roadside trees as is required by the scenic way regulations, which Hildreth is a scenic way. The area is also on the National Historic Register and has historical significance. The surrounding neighborhood is of historical significance. Most historic districts and historic committees in other towns have regulations about if you're going to replace a building because it has to be demolished, that there should be some sort of historic or sizing, scale, mass, frontage regulations, more so than just the zoning requirements. And if you all feel, as a board, that this building should be grandfathered into, that this project should be grandfathered into building on this lot, I would think that they should at least maintain the existing footprint within the existing front setback, the existing volume, the existing area of the house. Otherwise, you are denying the entire zoning bylaws table of dimensional regulations that all houses are supposed to abide by. Finally, if the town officials continue to allow the breakdown of the historical fabric of our town center neighborhood, we will lose the heart of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just quickly clarify something that's legal for the record?
Sure, go right ahead.
She mentioned something about the house not being lived in for a period of time and therefore losing any type of grandfather status. I think she's referring to a use abandonment. Here, there's no risk of that happening because it's an RA zoning district and the residential use is as of right. The structure is still in place. So this is exactly why you have this section of the bylaw to deal with non-conforming structures. An abandonment of use after 2 years might be applicable if the use were not allowed as of right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Justin Bork, 2 Hildreth Street. I am a direct abutter. So I just have a few concerns I want to make sure were heard. I did hear there was some reference on this house couldn't be restored. I didn't hear any direct evidence of that, who they spoke to. I'd love to hear what contractors were in there, with the size of the house, if it was the accurate number of bedrooms, could they fit a smaller septic system in there? What evidence is there that can't be done? Some of the concerns I have with the plan specifically, where the driveway is located, there is a large maple there. They're putting a retention wall as well as destroying the root zone. That's a 100-year-old tree that will be lost. Like there's very little chance it'll survive that type of damage. Also, I know there's kind of some statements that the setback is an improvement. I don't know the bylaw specifically, but if there's a 25-foot frontage right now that isn't meeting the setback requirement, and that increases to 65 feet, is that an improvement on a scenic way that now you have 65 feet of frontage that doesn't meet the setback requirement? Also, almost the entire structure is inside the setback non-conforming space. The current space is, the current footprint is about half the size of the new house. This house would not fit within the space that is required for the conforming setbacks. If you see the line through the middle of it, this structure wouldn't even fit in that space. So by allowing them to demolish a historic home, they're able to build a larger house. I think this now will set that precedence moving forward that if you buy an older home, you can destroy it and now not have to follow the bylaws and put in a bigger structure. I also have similar concerns to Wes that this is a larger footprint. This is an area that does have some groundwater issues. That displacement has to go somewhere. It's going to go in people's basements, and I don't see any mitigation for stormwater anywhere in the plans. And then finally, this structure is going out to the absolute maximum for the side yard setbacks. Those setbacks couldn't be met if they followed the front yard setbacks. That garage would not fit behind that setback requirement. So again, by not following the front yard setback, a larger structure is put in there that allows it now to go all the way against the absolute maximum side yard setback with property lines that are, you know, very old and potentially could have some variation depending on who's drawing those lines. Could open up definitely some questions down the line of, was the right property line put in place, and is this now conforming to those side yard setbacks? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else in the audience? Ellen?
Helen Hardy, 39 Main Street. I have a question about the demolition delay bylaw in this building. The age that the attorney gave is the 1930s, even if that's the age, and I think it's older, that falls underneath the demolition delay bylaw. So I'd like to understand what the process is between the Historic Commission holding a hearing and the process of the demolition delay bylaw, and how this board can actually make a decision until you know what the Historic Commission decides about demolition, moving, all the options that are there. So if you could explain to me that process and the chronology of that, and maybe the attorney could say, I don't know if an application for demolition delay has been submitted, but I'd like to understand that.
I can address that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Sure.
We did submit a demolition permit, which triggers the building inspector forwarding that permit to the Historic Commission. There will be a demolition delay hearing process here. We're running parallel tracks here, and there's no risk that this board could overturn anything that the Historic Commission is doing under its purview. We're not allowed to demolish that structure until we go through the demolition delay process. But there's no prohibition to filing for this special permit simultaneously.
Jeff, you're shaking your head up and down?
No, I'm saying we don't disagree. There's different jurisdictions, and so when they file the demolition permit, that does trigger that review process. You don't need an outcome of that process before you can commence with this one. They have to abide by both boards and their jurisdiction.
It's similar to filing an order of conditions as well as a site plan approval process, right? I can get my site plan approval, but if I don't get my order of conditions, there may be things on that site plan approval that cannot be completed.
Anybody else in the audience have any comment? Emily?
Around here if you don't mind, sorry.
For the chords.
Emily Teller, 9 Texas Road. I would very much like to suggest that you read Jean LaRoche Owen's letter and absorb what's in there before you make any decisions. Her turning it in by that time was legal, and she had reasons for doing that. So I think that's a really big part of your deliberations, and either take time here to read it or do a continuance until you can absorb that, because I think that's part of an abutter's opposition, not to the project per se, but to what is being proposed. You know, I don't think she's, I know she's not against a structure on that property, but she's very concerned with the historic character and what's in her letter. So I think that's one thing that you need to do in terms of the evidence that you're getting. Secondly, in relation to that, I think the septic system on this property is significant because it is going to preclude some plantings that would theoretically help the drainage. There won't be able to be plantings around the septic system, and that was basically submitted at 7:15 tonight. So again, that's part of your deliberation, I think. Even though that's not under your purview, I think it relates to how you look at this lot. Let's see. Oh, and I think the proponent's attorney also said that the letter talks about she's against refurbishing the house, and that's not true in the letter. My house was a very old house on Texas Road, and when we bought our house in 1983, it had a cesspit in the back that was in fact, what, leaking, is that what you call it, all over the yard. So I'm very familiar with that process, and we had to put in a septic system that met all the current standards at the time. I think that obviously would have to happen if any house went into this. So I'm not sure that this particular, he's saying that it's environmentally a benefit. Well, that would be the case with anything. So I'm not sure that that is a significant issue, because it would happen with whatever size house went in there. There would have to be some kind of working septic system. I'm a little concerned about using the granite foundation as a wall in front. I don't know if there's a stone wall. I can't see from the drawings that there is a stone wall, but Hildreth has a lot of stone walls, and that's part of the scenic road bylaw, as well as the trees. And I think, obviously, as a member of Westford Climate Action, but also as somebody who has been at many, many tree hearings with National Grid, et cetera, 100-year-old maple trees are not insignificant, both in drainage and in terms of what they do for the character of the center of Westford and also what they do environmentally. I think that tree is an environmental benefit that is at least as effective as any septic system that goes in there. So I sort of agree with Bob. I think if we could switch it around and keep the tree by moving the driveway to the other side, I think that would help. Let's see, sorry, I'm just not organized because I'm reacting to what was said here tonight. And I think also what Ellen brought up, I think there should be a continuance of this because I think the Historic Commission will be looking at this. Obviously, Conscom will be looking at this and the Planning Board. And I think your variances, in some ways, are significant in the whole process and not necessarily first. I'm very concerned with what little yard or soil is left in this proposal. I think it's a real issue for many issues: livability, drainage, the whole atmosphere of the house. I also think that the house next door at, what would it be, 6 Hildreth, should not set a precedent for this area and for this road. I think that that is also not in character with the neighborhood. And I think neighborhoods, we don't think about the whole town or even the whole center. When we think about neighborhoods, we think about the street and the abutters that are around there and what they have to live with. And I think looking at that house that is proposed is completely outside of the neighborhood. It looks to me like you're seeing several garage doors. I think the height is extreme for what the rest of the house is. And I just think it's not in character to have a livable, welcoming front of the house. So consider if you live next door. I appreciate your hearing my comments. I think this is significant. I also don't want us to be Lexington. I mean, I have friends who moved to a house in Lexington that was, you know, really close to the houses next to it because it was an older house that got torn down, and that's happening a lot in Lexington and Concord. And I don't think that Westford really wants to be one of those places where the smaller houses that maybe people could afford to live in get erased for houses that are too big for the property and too big for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience have a comment? Okay. Can you tell me if the elevation of the lot is going to be raised? I've been looking at the septic plan and the other plan, and it's pretty hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And some of the topo is shown on the plan. Those grades don't look too extreme.
2 feet?
That's what I'm getting from the backyard.
Yeah, it's,
You get 94 and then existing, so you got a 96 grade over an existing of 94. But that's in the area between the house and the septic.
So the reason I asked that question is, you know, some of the neighbors are concerned about water runoff. So it makes sense to me, if you're here and they're here, it's gonna be an issue.
well, no, I don't think runoff's gonna be an issue. Them saying runoff's gonna be an issue is no more credible than me saying that it's not. I mean, we have to design this site to make sure that we're not increasing the rate of flow onto adjacent properties. So, you know, there's been a lot of stuff that has been said that's completely inaccurate here. You know, we're not, number one, the last commenter suggested we were getting variances. We're not getting variances. This is a process that's specifically designed for reconstructing non-conforming structures. It's contemplated in the bylaw exactly what we're doing what we're doing here. We don't need to go for planning board approval and conservation approval. Of course, the historic process is going to take its ordinary course, but I would suggest that most of the historic purview rests firmly with the Historic Commission and not with this board. And, you know, there's been a lot of bandying about of the word precedent. I am far more concerned about the precedent of owners of property essentially having to come before a board for a redesign by committee from neighbors who don't like the aesthetic of the house. To me, that is far more dangerous than a 2,800 square foot home that might look like Lexington.
Yeah, but you're also in a historic district.
We are in a historic district, and that's why we need to go through the demolition delay process. But that has nothing to do with this board.
You're also significantly increasing the impervious surfaces. I mean, people have talked about drainage, but the size of that house and versus the size of the driveway and the impervious surfaces on the roof, I think that is a significant number. I don't know what the math equation might be, but I think you are increasing impervious surfaces on that small, very small lot.
But it's all code compliant. So it's not, you know, and again, we meet side and rear yard setbacks. So, you know, and drainage is not part of this application process. We don't require a site plan review for this application process. This is a special permit.
We've heard a lot of input from your neighbors, I think legitimate comments about this district and so forth and so on. And I'm getting the impression that you're not really interested in engaging with them and having a dialogue.
It's very difficult, first and foremost, Mr. Earl, to receive a letter that is...
No, I'm not talking about the letter, talking about the comments from 5 or 6 different people who live in that area. And I'm getting the feeling, and perhaps I'm wrong, that you want to fall back on this and that, but you're seeming to push back on having a dialogue with them, who I think made some legitimate comments. A couple of them in particular have expertise that could benefit you and your person who's owning this, that they would learn something and it would be more, if you will, in character with what we have in the town and what these people are advocating and asking you to get with them, if you will, and help.
Respectfully, we've not been reached out to by any of the residents.
Reached out tonight.
Well, hold on a second, if you don't mind, I just wanted to say a little bit more. I don't agree, and this is my personal opinion representing my client. I don't agree that it's appropriate for anyone who's building a home to have to sit with their neighbors and say, do you like this style of house or this style of house?
Nobody's suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is you talk to them and you have a dialogue with them. And stop trying to set up a straw man.
I'm sorry, I don't believe I'm doing that. When I'm
Yes, you are.
Mr. Earl will have to agree to disagree on that point.
Well, the fact of the matter is, you're not building a house on a lot that's compliant. You're coming to us asking us to do something out of the norm. That's the difference.
Yeah, you could have built you could rehab what you have there, right? And there'd be no issue.
I'm telling you.
I'm just saying, you can do that.
Yes, but no, I'm telling you that I don't think that we can, because the rest of that site doesn't perk. So the only place to put that septic system is there, and you cannot vary Title V. So that existing structure would be encroaching on the Title V setbacks. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, they're commenting personally towards me in the back. You may not be able to hear it, but this is, you know.
That's unqualified. That should not happen. That should not happen. There's also a comment, and I'm not sure about how that works with the plan with an extra, bathroom and so-called rec room. 3 bedrooms plus a substantially good-sized rec room with a bath, 3-bedroom septic with, and that conceivably could be 4-bedroom unit.
This is, again, the entire design is code compliant. There's, to me, to suggest that, and again, I know 10,000 square foot lots are not the norm in Westford, but in many communities, 10,000 square foot lots are the norm or large. And, you know, I don't think 2,800 square foot home and a 1,900 square foot footprint is exorbitant. And this is where we really get to. We're dealing with a lot of subjective here. And this is why to me, it's not productive to sit down and talk about what they may like to see on this lot, because it's all subjective. My client believes this is a very nice house that he's proposing, or he wouldn't be building it. He wouldn't have acquired this property if he didn't want to do something nice here. So it's all just subjectivity, and what these neighbors may think is appealing may be different than what the future neighbors think is appealing.
You have to do something nice with 2,200 square feet, 2,100 square feet. Jeff? 1,900.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps, I did lose my train of thought, perhaps the board just wants to focus explicitly on the criteria that is before you in your packet and see with what you've heard tonight, what the applicants presented, what you feel is relevant or not to your jurisdiction. I would suggest, as is typical, if it's a matter of course that the Board of Health or the Health Department has to review, say, septic designs, and you would not hold up an application for the jurisdiction of another. And the Historic Commission's purview, it's about demolition delay, right? So there's the demolition delay process. And they are going through that process. We are always being asked to have an efficient permitting system. And I think this board in the past, I think you've gotten better at staying in your lane and focusing on your jurisdiction. So perhaps right now, we could look at what your jurisdiction is, look at your criteria, and sort through the various comms tonight, and just stick to your criteria and see what you think makes sense to you folks. And in terms of the number of bedrooms, they will have to submit a proper application to the building department and the Board of Health, and if there are questions or issues as part of the standard building permit process, there will be comments, there may be even restrictions on the number of bedrooms through the Board of Health, and that's all a customary part of the process. If the Board of Health or the Health Department has questions or concerns, they may seek to impose a bedroom restriction on that dwelling. I'm sure this applicant is not unfamiliar with that process. I'm just cautioning you to just take a look at the criteria and see what you have questions relative to your criteria and jurisdiction, please.
I mean, I think the biggest question amongst everyone right now is, how is this house going to affect the drainage on a high water table area by putting a bigger foundation in the ground that is already saturated? Where's the water going to go?
Yeah, so is it less, or is it more detrimental to that site? And that's within our
One way or
purview,
the other, can
right?
someone explain to us where that water for that bigger foundation that's going in the ground is going to go? Is it going to go into the neighbor's property and cause problems?
Okay, we're getting somewhere. So that is something tied to your criteria, that's good, and that is something that could be cured by, say, review by the engineering department. Do they feel that would have an adverse effect relative to drainage? The onus would be on the applicant to provide some information for review by the engineering department. It's a technical.
Then the other point that Mr. Jeffries brought up, I think is pretty valuable, is the location of the driveway.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I agree
council
with that.
Would entertain flip-flopping, put the driveway kind of back in a similar location, because that is a very valuable point he raised.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either.
I don't know the implications of that from a plan standpoint. I would say that, I also don't want to concede that it's an issue where it is. If you look at the current plan, there's quite a bit of driveway on the existing right-of-way, and then when you're, on the property, there's additional driveway length there. You're talking about a single-family home, so there's not a lot of traffic being generated from the use in and of itself. So, typically I wouldn't suggest that we've got an issue here whenever you have a single-family residence, because, again, you're talking about, you know, half a dozen vehicle trips a day, generally speaking, on a three-bedroom home, probably.
I guess the board's just asking, is there any way you could maybe look at that, you know what I mean, to figure out,
Because a lot of people use that as a cut-through now.
Yeah.
And just whoever ends up being the resident, it's just adding to more of a potentially dangerous situation, where if they had a little bit more sight distance from the, kind of the present location of the driveway.
Jeff?
So, Mr. Chair, if I understand this correctly, you're proposing a new driveway location. Is that correct? There's not an existing driveway there now?
There's not an existing driveway. I think the existing driveway is further to the south. of the
There's a
property.
driveway there. There's a driveway. I've parked it.
No, I'm sorry, not in the location that we're proposing.
okay.
I thought that was what the question was.
No.
Okay.
No.
There is an existing driveway there, yeah.
But not where you're proposing?
That's
All right.
correct.
So what would typically happen is you would probably have to apply for what's called a curb cut or driveway permit. And during that permitting process, Public Works Department, Highway, would review it. And if there are either safety or other issues, that's something that would come up during that normal review process. So, and I would hope that this board, you know, I don't know which way the board is gonna go, that is something that could initiate a change based on specific safety and criteria to, say, the Highway Department. And in the past, I think this board has been very flexible. If something like that is brought up, they've given flexibility to the applicant to make necessary adjustments to try to be in keeping with whatever you folks decide, and allowing flexibility to come back to review if changes are warranted based on, say, technical review for something like that.
Okay. Yes.
Following up on that, Jeff, when would the scenic road bylaw come into this process? I can't remember which board it is that has that jurisdiction, and how would that work? And could perhaps there be one member who is in a butter who is concerned, because, you know, the engineering meetings aren't public hearings, and that's not something that, so if there could be a person who was sort of this designated hitter here from this side of the room, who could be informed about those, so that the abutters I know that's not a legal requirement, but it's a favor that I'm asking the board the town to consider, not this board, as to how this group can continue, you know, the engineering, all of the things that you mentioned. But the real question is, where does scenic bylaw come in? And remind me which board it is and how that would work for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the scenic road bylaw would come into play if the applicant was proposing to alter existing stone walls, and/or if they were proposing to cut or alter or eliminate trees in that right-of-way as part of a roadway project. So are you proposing to eliminate any existing stone walls or to alter existing stone walls?
My understanding is no.
Are you proposing to cut or eliminate any either public shade trees or trees
Again.
at or within that right-of-way?
My understanding is no. And if we were, we
They would trigger
would trigger the scenic
It
road
would be
bylaw.
a public hearing by the planning board, and it may or may not, if it involved trees, also involve a public hearing with the tree warden.
Mhm.
We try to usually combine those when possible for efficiency.
Thank you.
Comment in the back? Can you come up to the microphone, please?
Mentioning the trees, I do know this plan doesn't have that maple tree, which essentially is where the driveway is. What's happening to protect that tree? Because I can tell you, if it's not protected and you put a driveway where the tree's root zone is, it will die. And it's a 100-year-old maple tree in a scenic way.
Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
I have two questions. The applicant's name has never been mentioned tonight. Could we know the applicant's name?
Yeah, it's in the application itself, it's in the application material. It's the Ryan J. Walker Revocable Trust of 2023.
And did I hear that this doesn't have to go before the planning board or the conscom?
No,
Is that correct or that's incorrect?
that's correct. It does not have to go for those boards.
That's really scary to me, because,
There's no reason.
well, it's a huge project.
They're
that
building
has
a house.
It's a house.
Huge project.
It's a big house on a small lot, and I can't imagine that, okay, that's fine, if that's what the law is, that's what the law is, but that's scary for a. Thank you.
All right, so we've heard a lot of comment tonight. What's the pleasure of this board? I mean, based on the criterion, impacts on national environment, I think that's an issue. Traffic flow and safety, I think, is an issue.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, that one you're calling an issue maybe because of the potential site distance? Because there's no traffic really being proposed on a three-bedroom, single-family home.
It's common sense.
So, but I just want to understand
It's
the.
common sense.
Okay, no, I understand. I just want to understand the concern, and maybe I can address it here, because as Mr. Morris said, if we have to go for a curb cut permit, sightlines and things of that nature will be reviewed.
I think the whole board was kind of taken back by the traffic or the sightline issue, not realizing that was an issue. I travel that road every day, and I never gave that a thought, because there's nobody been in that house, like you said, for decades, so that hasn't been an issue. However, it could be an issue, not that there's gonna be a lot of traffic there, but all it takes is one. So, I just think there's a couple of problems that need to be addressed.
You didn't mention drainage, Scott.
Drainage, yeah, drainage is another issue that, I think we need a clearer understanding of. So, I mean, from what I'm hearing from this board, I think there's a continuance in order.
I just think,
I think
that,
so.
we need some adjustments. I mean, I don't know exactly what adjustments they're looking for. It just doesn't seem to pass the smell test. And it's like,
So,
it's a big, and somebody suggested it's a large house on a small lot. There's a difficult corner there coming off of Boston Road onto Hildreth Street. And Scott's right, it's been an abandoned home for a long time. No one's ever had any issues with traffic there. There will be issues. It's a large house. Again, there's a 3-bedroom plus upstairs. It's just I think it's an oversized home on a 10,000 square foot lot in that location. It's in the middle of nowhere, it would have been different, but where it's located in that busy center of town, I think it's a substantial concern, in my opinion.
So, Mr. Chair, would you like benefit of, say, engineering technical review for some of these issues that you're citing in terms of drainage or sightline prior to the next meeting?
yes. And I think that, from what I'm hearing from this board also, is that the size of the structure is big. So,
I guess what I would suggest to the board is, again, if the size is big just subjectively, that's something different than if the size is big because of drainage concerns.
well, I think there's a lot of issues on size. I'm sure the drainage is not gonna be a problem. But the size of the structure compared to what's there now, regardless of what the market bears, I just think where it sits, it's a big house. Not as big as the one next to it, but it's still a big house.
I mean, it's really only 1,200 square feet larger than the existing structure.
Only 1,200 square feet.
That's
Yeah, no, I
40%
mean,
bigger. It's probably
but-
40% larger than what's there.
But,
What's the other one, 1,600? Is the existing house 1,600?
You gotta
There's
compare
no-
footprint to footprint.
again, in this, the original structure built in the 1930s, people live in different homes now. And the owner should have the right to develop his house in a way that's code compliant and consistent with your performance standards. And I don't believe that the additional 1,200 square feet tips the scale on substantially detrimental to the character of the neighborhood, especially in the totality of the other 4 thresholds, which include, the environmental concerns, the, one-to-one traffic, because it's going 3-bedroom to 3-bedroom. This application does not meet that criteria to deny it.
Your opinion.
Well, I-
Find a lot that you don't need setback relief from and build that 2,800 square
But
foot
that's
house.
very difficult. I don't think the board should be telling that to property owners in the town of Westford. I think that's chilling. I think, it's something that I think, we don't want to be, suggesting that somebody might buy a lot and not be able to build the house that they're looking to build if they can meet the performance requirements in the bylaw.
Once again, you're coming to us looking for something.
Well, I'm coming to you.
We have the right to say to you, we would like to see something different.
I'm coming to you through a process that's established in the zoning
That-
bylaws in
You're very
Westford.
correct. You're very correct.
So
You could rebuild what's right there. You wouldn't have to come in front of us.
I think I've told you before, I don't think that's a possibility, but
So here you are, okay? I just think, you've taken in everything everybody said. I've seen you take notes. I just think you need to go back to the drawing board a little bit. We'd like a technical review, engineering, traffic, and,
Drainage.
Drainage is the big one.
and, just to.
Can I just, for clarification, whenever we continue, I'd like to give the applicant as clear direction as possible.
So, correct, yep.
So, is it enough to get something from the applicant, from a qualified professional, providing an opinion relative to drainage, and a separate one relative to access, and then for the engineering department to review that?
Yes.
Okay. Absent that,
So
then
the
the engineering
applicant-
will be asked to simply opine on their own, based on the materials submitted.
So the applicant does that survey?
Well, it seems to me there's application materials already in the record, and the engineering department can simply review that. Or if the applicant wants an opportunity to provide some statement or information from a qualified professional that they can review, I think that really is up to the applicant, their preference. The engineering department can certainly perform a review on what is already before you. And if the applicant wants to provide additional information or an opinion from a professional, then they can review that as well.
Okay. Bob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, if I could be included in the drainage, we presently receive drainage from engineered plans of approximately 12 abutters that we never got before. When we had the big rainstorm, 11.5-inch rainstorm, over 1 million gallons came off our property onto Boston Road. So there's a really big drainage issue there. It isn't just a question of a few things. We get it from all of the abutters on that end. So I'd just like to be part of hearing what they're talking about, if possible.
So I will say that is not a customary process. Usually the engineering department provides their review and they provide their written opinion, which is then a public record that can be shared. If you have any requests of the engineering department, we can certainly share that.
I'd like to suggest that the board make the request that Mr. Jeffers be allowed to observe and participate when they make their evaluation.
Mr. Chairman, we're talking about submitting information that the engineering department's going to review in their ordinary course.
May I say
And
something? I've lived in this town quite a while. Okay, and this town is a really nice town. And it's a really nice town because we have a lot of people that care and participate. We all don't live in individual silos. We talk, we dialogue, we share, we agree, we move ahead. And I'm somewhat troubled by what I perceive to be your reluctance, your attitude, whatever you'd like to call it. I think we've described you. We try to go through a process. We try to be beneficial and helpful. Our goal, and I would hope it would be yours, is to make for a better Westford. And that's what I think we've done for many, many years. And I think we ought to continue to do that.
Mr. Chairman, all I was going to say to finish my sentence was just that, Mr. Jeffries would certainly have the opportunity to review the public record when it's submitted by the applicant, as well as when town engineering completes their report, and that would be the ordinary course. Mr. Jeffries is not a peer review consultant for the town. He's not representing the applicant. As far as I'm aware, he's not a PE. He may be. As far as I'm aware, he's not a PE. So I don't support that at all. And I'm sorry, I don't entirely understand what the implication was towards me personally, but my feelings on this are more legal and technical than anything else. It's nothing against Mr. Jeffries. It's just not the way things are done.
Probably right. You're probably right.
I mean, that being said, we would be willing and happy to, once we receive the information, we're happy to share it even in advance of the board's packet. When we have it, we can share it.
Okay. So what's the process, Jeff? The applicant is going to seek some data, and then the town engineer is going to review it?
So it's up to the applicant, in my opinion, if they want to provide additional information to facilitate engineering department's review, or they simply have the information that's already before you folks. We know your concerns relate primarily to traffic, circulation, access, safety, and drainage implications. There's still a third part that I heard from you folks that is not going to be cured by technical review, and that is size, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if possible, it would be great if you could provide a little more substantive direction to the applicant in terms of not just you think it's big, but why do you think it's big, or what changes, if any, might make it more palatable for your consideration. Because if he goes out and satisfies the other two concerns, it would not be the best if we didn't move things forward by not giving enough direction in terms of your third concern.
Anybody want to give a shot to size?
Well, I mean, isn't size related to
You're increasing
impervious surfaces?
You're increasing the size.
Increasing the
right?
size, you're increasing
Increasing
impervious
the
surface.
impervious surface. Can that 10,000 square foot lot even handle the amount of rainwater that will come off that roof, garage, and driveway?
Exactly. You got it.
Without damaging other people's property.
So I think it would be helpful to get, if possible, I mean, there's going to be an existing footprint, plus looking at driveway for impervious area, say, as proposed. I'm not sure what that delta will be, but that is something that the engineering department would look at in terms of drainage, right? So that concern may be addressed partially by looking at, drainage review. They would look at existing impervious areas and proposed impervious areas.
Mm-hmm.
So that part, I think, could be addressed by the drainage review, building footprint. But in terms of overall size, do you have a concern relative to the size, or is it really primarily tied to the impervious area and the drainage?
I have a concern about the size.
I do too. I think the height and size.
2,800 square feet on a 10,000 square foot lot is too big.
I'm more the impervious area. I mean, they almost have to work the equation backwards. That the engineers figure out how much of the impervious water created they can retain on the lot. And I think that's gonna drive the footprint of the house.
Exactly.
So the other thing you can do too is, you said this house is 28 feet, I believe?
Hi.
High, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah, high. Maybe you could tell us how high the house next door to it is.
Well, the existing house is 25 feet.
Okay. I'm asking about the white one next door.
Oh,
If we can get the height of that house so we have a relative idea.
Well, the garage next door is probably
It's big, it's got
as
the-
high.
Yeah, so the garage is high. It's got the-
I can tell you the height of that structure is 35 or under because it's zoning compliant. But again, speaking to height of structures, I mean, your bylaw, we're here for a setback relief, an area, right? Your bylaw speaks to height. We comply with the height.
We understand you comply with everything. We get that.
I didn't say that, Mr. Chairman. I said I'm seeking special permit
Made
relief.
it known to us that we get that.
I never said that, Mr. Chairman.
Once again, Scott's common sense, you gotta look at things and say, what about this, what about that?
So I think the best comparison, honestly, not to the neighbor's house next door, is the 25 feet of the existing structure versus the 28 feet of the proposed structure.
That's fair, that's fair.
On top of the 2-foot added to the elevation of the lot.
Well, but we do, but height is measured from the ground level.
Top of foundation, I thought.
Mean
No.
grade, mean grade.
Mean grade.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else with any other
We're gonna
comment?
comment back, I think.
Come up to the microphone, please.
Sure. Wes Olson for 5 Boston Road. So do I understand they're raising the entire lot 2 feet? Is that what, 'cause I heard 2 feet mentioned, and that's a serious concern that I have.
So we're gonna, what did you say, Danny?
Oh, just in the backyard, to grade over the proposed leach trenches for the septic to the back of the house, it appears to be raised about 2 feet.
Okay.
But what we're asking the applicant to do is have the engineers do basically a hydrology study on all of
Okay.
that, to try to retain all that.
I'd be happy to show the engineers the flood in my backyard from 6 Hildreth. I've got some good video of a lot of
I
water.
mean, that's one of our main concerns. so it
Okay,
doesn't-
that's my main concern too.
Right.
Right, thank you.
All right, this board all set? Okay, so we're gonna have a continuance too, Jeffrey,
Number 15, sir.
November 15th. And so you understand everything we've asked?
Sure do, Mr. Chairman.
If not, staff will gladly inform you.
I know they will, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion to continue this to November 15th.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, welcome.
Have a good night.
You too.
Walker needs a new lawyer. Help us out a little. Yeah.
That's just my.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
We probably have more fun.
I used to take and join with Jimmy Bob. My name is Robert. Yeah, okay, Bob. Oh.
All right, everybody organized?
Want to give Jimmy a minute?
We'll give Jimmy a minute. Okay, before we get started,
Mr. Chairman, to the council for the applicant, I just want to disclose, I have been a member of the 35 Town Farm Road Task Force.
as a town employee,
If it's warranted, I can recuse myself from the hearings. If council doesn't have a problem, I would be happy to continue and participate. But I just want to put that out there.
We have no objection, Mr. Chair, for him staying on.
okay, good, thank you. Okay, so, public hearing on 35 Town Farm Road. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Attorney Robbins, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. I'm here tonight on behalf of Choice and SCG Partners. We're very excited to be here to start this project. As you know, this was came through a town-supported RFP, for which Choice and SCG were the winners of the RFP. We've gone through and got our project eligibility letter, and now we're here today to get our comprehensive permit. Here tonight with David Hedison from Choice, and also Don Rose, the project engineer, and Janice Mamayak, the project architect. Before I get into the project, I just want to give David a second just to talk about Choice.
Hi, good evening, and thank you again. Choice Inc., we are over 20 years old. We're part of the Chelmsford Housing Authority, and our goal is to develop affordable housing in the communities that are close to us, primarily. And for us, we're thrilled to be here for Town Farm. It's a site that I really have a special place in my heart, to see it restored back to a place where people can find a place to live, and also secure food that's very important to them. Choice is committed to this project, and we look forward to going through this process with you.
With that, I'll skip the comprehensive permit process because I think this board understands the process and how we got here today. But we're here today with a full comprehensive permit application. The proposed project is for 35 units of senior housing, and by senior I mean 62 and over. Of the 35 units, 6 will be studios and 29 will be one-bedroom units. As to affordability, 20 of these units will be priced at 60% of the area median income. 10 will be truly affordable at 30% or lower of the area median income, and then 5 will be market rate units with no income restrictions whatsoever. As David stated, we're going to rehabilitate and revitalize the existing structure, which is important to the community, and we're going to add some new portions to the structure, which I'll let the architect talk about in a moment. We're also very excited to be adding a new food pantry to this development, which I think is much needed in town, which right now is in the basement of the Cameron Senior Center. I know the board understands that we're hoping to move this project along quickly. That's just not due to me being pushy. That's because we're trying to get to project funding this year. We think that we'll be able to apply by the end of December to get in this funding round, which is very exciting, which means we can move this project right around if we get funded in the first project round. I think with that, what I'll do is I'll turn over to Don Rose and allow him to go through the civil aspects of the project and give you a little overview.
Thank you, Board. So the site design, as you know, the existing parcel has multiple structures on it, a burn building, a couple of garages. All of those are removed as part of the project, and what we've got is a site dedicated to the food pantry with parking on the left-hand side right over here that's employees, with a drop-off zone, so a loading zone. 5 parking spaces out the front for the food pantry users, and then parking associated that allows the connection still to the parking for the Rogers Fire Station in the back. That was a requirement of the RFP. We've got the historic building here, and then the addition that's been located to allow this flow. As part of this process, we've tried to maximize the amount of parking on the site while providing the amenities that are, that meet the needs of both the food pantry and the people who are going to live here. So we've got several patio areas and open sidewalks, landscape area. The whole site has been designed to limit the amount of impervious, so we're almost a net zero for impervious on the site, which is good from a stormwater perspective. We've actually added stormwater infrastructure, so if I was to go to the grading and drainage plan, we provide an underground drainage system, which helps to infiltrate additional stormwater, which exceeds the requirements of the stormwater permit. We've got a sewer system. So during the RFP, there was a suggestion of reusing the existing Title V system, which there's very little information on other than it's likely a cistern located somewhere behind the building. Options were to create a Title V septic system,
our preference was to maximize infiltration and connect to the existing wastewater treatment plant. This allows us to, again, stormwater contained on site, provide additional recharge, and provide a constant flow to an existing wastewater treatment plant that gets temporary flow. So it gets no flow during the summer months. This helps wastewater treatment plants actually operate better. And the town offered this up. We think this works very well. So we have a sewer pump station with a force main all the way up to the Norman E. Day School. So we have recycling, 2 recycling trash areas on the site. We show preliminary locations for electrical, for the water, all of these. As you receive the review letter from the engineering department, we have to organize and work with the departments to finalize some of these details. Usually that comes later on in the process, once we've gotten through closer to building permit time. That's the preference for this, because these do take a couple of years typically for funding, and code changes may require us to make some alterations either to the building or to site constraints. And that's generally the lay of the land for the engineering.
So, before you go any further, it takes 2 years to fund these?
Okay.
So, and you want to get it done by the end of this year because you're going to get funding?
Well, it's a
So
process.
what are we
So we'll
doing?
talk about the process, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, but when you actually get a grant for the funding, it's not as if you get the money right away. You actually have to go through a closing process, which takes some time with the state. Anybody that's ever had to deal with money from the state can appreciate that we don't get the money right away.
So what I'll say is each year, there's one big door at, we call it formerly DHCD, which is HLC now. So when you're going to that door opens once a year. That door is gonna open a little bit in about 3 weeks. They're gonna say, do you have projects that you want to move forward? We have a pool of about 5 projects, but this project is in the top of our list. We are submitting a pre-application in 3 weeks and indicating to them, give us permission to submit the full application in January. That application will go in January. We will have answers by the end of the summer if it's going to be funded or not. If it's not funded, we can potentially go back to a mini round in the fall. Whether it's the summer or the fall, it takes about 6 months after an award to actually go to a closing. So if you imagine you're buying a house, we're not only having one loan, we actually come to the table with maybe 9 or 10 sources of funds. And on this project alone, we're talking well over $20 million of funding from outside sources coming to us at 0 interest, or basically a grant. I'm not the only one lining up for this money. There are usually 3 or 4 times the number of projects than there is funding for. We were with the governor, I was with the governor today, where she just announced a $4 billion housing bond bill that's going forward, which may speed up the process. But never do I want to present to the community that this is an easy road, that this is going to be, give us the permit and we'll get you the money next week. I always want to be realistic, because my hope and my goal is to have a strong application going forward, which we always do, but it's always contingent upon funding availability. So when we say 2 years, it could be 2 years. Our hope is less than that. But I never want to have to see you and you say to me, you told me 1 year, what the heck are you talking about? It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, and that's the honest truth. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, so I'm just going to turn over to Janice just to go through the architecture.
Images of our proposed building that we are looking at for Town Farm. In this image, same as up there, yes, you can see the historic building to the right of the page, both the older brick building and the white clad L building, and then as the site steps down, so does our building, so that the addition that we're proposing is to the rear, reflecting varied roof forms and materials, and our entry porch being right down there in the middle, kind of looking like that, a created farmhouse, and that porch as that welcoming home feeling, recalling the shape and massing of the actual town farm elevation. If we look at more in aerial view, there we go. We can see more of the positioning. Again, the existing town farm stepping down to a 3-story residential building. Our building ground floor is lower than the existing, so the second floor of our residential level will connect with the first floor of the existing historic building. Don talked about the parking. We'll also have a zero curb kind of barrier-free pickup and drop-off area right by our entry porch. Introducing new plantings, outdoor space, and cleaning up the existing farm, town farm building itself. If we were to look at some highlights of the site plan, there we go. Again, maintaining the historic face to the community. This will be cleaned up and renewed. Pretty much, that's the blue right here, right off of Town Farm Road. Pretty much as you see it today, but refreshed and renewed. The porch, again, right in the entryway at the knuckle of the drive as the residential entry, and where residents will enter their services and their units, but all of those connections into the existing building. We're proposing all native landscaping, whether it's plantings or trees for shade. We had a nice conversation with Sue Thomas on your sustainability committee and walked through different ideas there. One of them being the patios that Don talked about on the southern side. Maybe one of them is introducing planting, raised planting beds and on-site composting to maintain that kind of agricultural feeling of the site. I mentioned the zero curb entry area, the barrier free for our senior population, and then planting and other activities on the site. If we were to look at floor plans, this is the lowest level of our building. Again, it is the connecting or more equal to the basement level of the town farm building. So that's where our entry area is. The yellow is kind of the common spaces, a lobby, an office building, and then the orange is reflective of units. All units are designed to meet current code, current energy code, which just changed this year, so that's bringing a higher level of sustainability. All electric systems, no fossil fuel, including electric domestic hot water generation, which is a challenge, but we are exploring all options there. Also, HLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, they have really proactive guidelines for designing for seniors, and this will meet that to the T. You know, extra dimensions in bathrooms and kitchens for maneuverability and lighting and technology. They'll be designed to meet all of that. We go up a floor. Oh, I meant to mention too, we've got 2 elevators. One elevator will be situated right by the entry for ease of convenience for our residents. And then another elevator will help mitigate the varying elevations as from our building to the historic. And so that will make accessible, the upper floor of the town farm accessible. So second floor of our addition is the first floor of the town farm. In purple, you see the areas that are designated for the food pantry. Service coming from the side with some parking there. The main entry is there in symbolically of entry, but the primary entrance is as it is today, kind of in the knuckle there. So there's food storage and offices in the blue areas, and then more public-facing rooms for the food pantry in the purple. The yellow areas are amenity spaces for our residents, meeting rooms, wellness rooms, what have you. But again, keeping a lot of that historic character that is there right now, just renewing it and bringing it up to code. Again, more units, and then the third floor. Again, the second floor of the town farm, and more units on the third floor. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Just a couple other points I think that you can see in the design that we've taken into consideration, creating green space on the outside, so there is open green area for the residents here, but also indoor amenity space so that there is social space inside. They certainly will be able to walk around the site. When you leave the site to the right, the sidewalk starts after the Rogers Fire Station. Anybody that's familiar with that area, with the grading and the trees right there, Rogers Fire Station, there's really not an ability to put more of a sidewalk in there. But I will also tell you that this is not designed to be an active adult community. This is designed to be more of a supported services community. The parking is also designed that way, where we find not all of our residents have one car. Certainly, none of our residents have two cars. We find that our ratio for parking is less than 0.8. So that this reflects that. We think we'll have more than enough. We brought some examples, if the board wants to see it, of a couple other projects we've done, that we have the same amount of parking and that they're just not used. We have similar we have a couple more spaces at Helena Crocker, but we don't think that they'll be necessary, quite frankly. Most of our population uses family resources or third-party resources for transportation. If any of you are familiar with the Westford Council on Aging, they also have a service for all seniors that gets them to appointments, shops, jobs, and other appointments, not just in Westford, but in surrounding communities. And most of the residents at Village of Mystery Springs, we think at Helena Crocker and at this project will use that amenity as well. So we think this is more than sufficient parking, and certainly enough ability for our residents to get from point A to point B if they need to, whether that's to the senior center, to the Millworks to play some pickleball, or to Littleton for a doctor's appointment. They can get there. Be able to get their groceries and whatever they need within the unit themselves. I know we have comments that came in, and there's not a ton of comments, but I think that's because this project went through technical review with all of the department heads. Staff was great to set that up. So I think a lot of the upfront comments or issues have been dealt with the town departments and boards. Any comments this board has received, we've gone through and tried to answer them individually. We did just submit that the end of last week, though. We just got engineering comments today. I really want to thank Paul and Jeremy for keeping engineering in-house. I think prior to the next meeting, what we'll do is we'll go through their comments in depth with them and make sure that they're satisfied with all of our responses. Like Don pointed out, this type of affordable housing is a little bit more of a moving target. It's not like Alder Point, where you have 8 units and the 8 units are going to be the set 8 units that you have today. The code may change, the state may require that we do a different bump out or a slightly different design, so the building might change or modify slightly, so we won't go to full construction design until we get through that funding process. So that's probably a little bit different than this board's used to. So some of those conditions Paul and Jeremy have as a standard condition in their engineering letter, we will be looking for those to be conditions of approval, that those requirements be satisfied prior to building permits, which we think we can easily do. And just one more point, and then I'll turn over, Mr. Chair. The waivers, we did have a conversation with staff. We understand that they want to review those with us, so I would request that we don't go through waivers tonight. We'll go back through those with staff and make sure that we've included everything that's necessary, and that we can go through them at the next board meeting. If there's anything specific the board would like to discuss, we're happy to answer any of your questions.
So, because you want to fast track that, we're going to throw the big rocks tonight.
That's great. Yes, we'd ask that you do so.
Real big ones.
Okay.
So, parking is a serious, serious concern of mine.
Okay.
In the town of Westford, I don't care where you have other units or other buildings, I would like to see 1 car per 1 unit. Even though it doesn't meet your norm, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see some visitor spaces. You know, you want to go visit your grandma or your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, you gotta have a place to park. So I gave you 35 spaces per unit, 3 visitor spaces. The food pantry van is gonna be parked there all the time. There's one more. You have 5 food pantry workers. Because I talked to the food pantry today, I did my homework. I think there should be a spot for a maintenance person. Someone pulls up to fix something, do whatever. They can't leave the truck in the middle of the parking lot. And then the food pantry, I think, is a great idea. But it's not a great idea if people who want to use the pantry can't park somewhere to go inside and get what they need and come out. Once again, you can't park in the middle of the parking lot. You can't use the fire department's parking. So I allotted 5 spots, which came up with number 50, okay? 70 is what's supposed to be there, but I'm going with 50. I just think that however you have to get the 50, that's what you gotta do. You know, if you have to take away a unit, make the whole project a little smaller, so be it. But I just think that's important, because I think it's a great project. However, it's a small envelope over there. You get a lot of restrictions, and you want to have it done right. We want to have it done right, and I think parking is the #1 concern that I have.
Can I share a few things with you? So, I mean, I understand, and I appreciate everything you said. We're working with Helena Crocker right now at that site. That's in Westford.
We approved it.
Right, I know. And we did Village at Mystery Spring on Tadmick. Most of our seniors that are coming in to live with us are like in their late 70s and 80s. And we're talking about people that may be earning about $1,600 a month in their income. A lot of them we know personally because we manage the properties, and they have homemakers that are doing the shopping for them. And the majority of our residents, we don't even see them driving, nor do their family want them to drive. And we end up seeing, you know, a number of spots created for this belief that, you know, every person in their late 70s and 80s are going to have one car for themselves. For me, I said it's really important, you know, that we have amenity space, that we have the green space, that we have outdoor patios. And, you know, the population we're working with is not an active community. And we even see with Helena Crocker, we have 18 spots for 18 units. We've already qualified all the people moving in, and we know who has cars and who doesn't. And again, we're below the 0.8 per unit. We're closer to 0.6. It's not some sort of oddity. It's the actual thing that we're seeing. These people are, you know, of extremely low income or low income. And when it comes to buying groceries, taking care of their medication, being able to go to the hairdresser or pay their co-pays, that's where the money's going, not for car insurance, not for cars, and not for gas. And so while I completely appreciate your desire for one car per unit, it's going to be, you know, it might make you happy and feel comfortable, but it's not something that's going to actually be used, which makes me sad.
Okay. I think some of the other issues that I would have is that the snow storage space is pretty small. I think you need to look at that or figure out off-site, haul it off-site, do whatever, but that has to be addressed. And, you know, my eyes aren't that great, so how big are those patios? There's little numbers written next to them, but I can't see what the numbers are.
So they're about 10 by 20 and a little bit bigger than that. They're just prelim, so they're pervious patios at this point. They may get bigger, they may get smaller, depends on the amenity space and where doors end up. So we put something in place. The top one, that's not shown on here.
There's one that's kind of like a kitty corner.
So we've got.
Oh, that one there, how big is that one?
That one itself, I'm sorry, I don't have a scale on me, but it's closer to, you know, 3 to 350 square feet.
And can I share something with you?
Sure.
So even with Helena Crocker, you see, we put our that type of amenity space is right next door to the indoor space. So it becomes more of like an indoor-outdoor area, because we have our seniors that want their fresh air, the seniors that want their air conditioning because they can't breathe. So we usually try to give them like the indoor-outdoor space. So we usually never have an outdoor space that will accommodate all, you know, 35 residents at one time. Plus being, you know, pretty much funded fully by the state, they don't give us the funds to do like really above and beyond kind of amenities, because at this point, building a new affordable unit through this program or across the state, whether it's a 1-bedroom, a studio, or a 2, we're talking $500,000 to $600,000 per unit. That's all in. So we're limited as far as like, I would love to have a even larger patio.
Well, no, I just was trying to get a feeling for how big that they were. I mean, it doesn't have to be enormous, because, you know, this particular site, you're out there. What are your choices? You can walk next door to the fire department or walk across the street to the mills. Which leads me to, you need some sidewalks along there. So that people can walk to those different places.
We looked at, can I?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you come out of the development, you take a right towards the, we can show that, towards the fire station there. There's a bunch of like town, I want to say town planted trees. So I was, when we looked at that, I was like, okay, are we gonna go through and like clear cut all those trees to put a sidewalk in? Then we could cross the street, and that grade over there is completely, I don't want to say ridiculous, but is it constructed?
It's, yeah, you'd have to install walls just to get the sidewalks in there. Plus, the limited right-of-way that the town actually owns in there it limits us for putting in sidewalks. So, as David was saying, this is looking down the town farm on your left-hand side. This is the stand of trees in front of the Rogers Fire Station. So you couldn't put one to connect to the existing sidewalk at the end of the Rogers Fire Station without essentially replacing every single one of these established trees. Then on the other side, as you can see, there's a stone wall here. That grade is probably 2.5 to 3 feet up at least. In most cases, almost as much as 5 feet. And while a sidewalk, if you're gonna put something in there, we're gonna have to, like I said, retaining wall the whole way, and just to get that space in. And again, the right-of-way hugs this roadway, unfortunately.
Well, and for good or for bad, what's right next door is the Rogers Fire Station, which is probably the first plowed area that you ever see in town. So they can easily leave this site and walk on the pavement right up to the existing sidewalk that goes towards St. Catherine's. And there's also a crosswalk there that goes to the sidewalk up the hill all the way to Forge Village. Okay. So we think that will probably be the most accessible route if somebody was going to go walk. And then the more adventurous 62-year-olds and over, I would imagine, would take a left out and go over the bridge and then take a left onto Milo and get directly onto the trails going down into the back of the conservation restriction area. But going left towards the millworks is absolutely no way to put in a sidewalk, because you get to the pinch point there with the wetlands, the resource areas, lich paints, and then the railroad crossing. I tried when we were trying to do Milo, so I know that for a fact. But I do think the best sidewalk ability is to go right. Because as you know, when you go right, you go down Rogers Fire Station, you can actually walk all the way down to the day school, through the parking lot there of the auto body, up that sidewalk, all the way past St. Catherine's, cross the street now, all the way past Graniteville Woods. So there's a really good walking area there. And then if you have seniors that are more able, they can take a left into the trail system that goes down Milo.
Okay.
But I do think, just to our point earlier, most of these seniors will be using transportation, either senior transportation or third-party transportation to go to their designated areas. But if they were to go for a walk, I would imagine that would be the way they would go.
70's the new 50.
Completely.
I'm treading lightly, Mr. Chair.
What about the rest of the board? Comments, questions?
Is there an area where the residents can gather, I guess, or is that, yeah?
Do you want to talk about it? I mean, but I'll just say, we have, our group, we have an activities coordinator. Our nonprofit, anything that we generate for income, we actually reinvest it back into, activities coordination, meal programs. So one thing we have to do, and I want always, is to have an area for activities, gathering, and she's going to show you our architect. Plus HLC requires that we do this stuff as well.
So in the new addition, the yellow area is within the footprint there, a lobby area with the office. But in the existing town farm, the blue and purple areas are the food pantry, but we've got, the other yellow areas in the L of the building available. So there's a large room that could be a wellness room on the upper floors. There's another gathering space. We want to keep the smaller rooms intact, obviously, because that's reflecting the historic nature of the building. So they might be meeting rooms or libraries, or where a resident might need a visiting professional, whether it's a doctor or a social worker, whatever. There's a number of smaller rooms that are available for that. But the second floor of the existing town farm, the ground floor, in that one-story addition, whether it's a wellness room, that's what we've been flagging it as, or something other, that's a I wanna say it's like a 30 by 30 at least, and then the lobby itself.
Which is the hottest spot because they love to wait for the mail and just be able to see who's bringing who in and who's leaving and what's going on. It's our joy.
The Christmas, well, the holidays, right? They
Yeah.
wanna get together.
Comment on handicap accessibility.
Oh, so this is the thing. This is why sometimes I don't want to say I go crazy, but, anyone I'm moving in, I have to anticipate they may have, a knee replacement, hip replacement. They're going to probably maybe declining in their, final time. So everything is senior friendly and adaptable. We don't have bathtubs anymore. We have shower stalls. I can go through all of the design components, but everything is senior friendly because I'm looking at things now and it's like people could stay there until they're, the very end.
And in actuality,
Sorry.
the senior
The more correct
guidelines
words.
require more than what our accessibility codes require. So every unit has a wall oven and a cooktop, with the knee space underneath the cooktop. Every unit has a shower instead of having to step into a tub. Every unit has 66-inch turning radius in bathrooms and kitchen. Code only requires 60 inches. So we have to thank the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for mandating all of these accommodations.
So what about wheelchairs?
Oh.
Fully accessible.
Fully accessible. So if you went to Helena Crocker, you would say to me, why are these bathrooms so large? It's not even a handicapped unit. Like, all of our bathrooms are large enough, so if you're in a wheelchair, you can spin 40 times if you
Or
wanted
if
to.
you're not in a
Sorry.
wheelchair, but you have a care provider, maybe you're in a walker and just need a little bit extra support. That's what the guidelines are designed for, so that they can accommodate aging with dignity.
Right.
Yeah, I urge any of the board members that are interested, if you want to schedule, to walk over to the Helena Crocker units and meet David or any of the team over there just to see what these units look like and just how accessible they are. Please reach out to us because we'd be happy to bring any of the board members over so you can see what a similar design would look like here.
Scott, I just had two things. One was a point, in the existing building, we went through a lot over the period of a couple of years as far as what historical aspects we're gonna retain in the building. Just from the sashes in the window facing the street, some of the interior doors. David Gutbrod was on the task force, was chair of the historical commission. So a lot of those real important features are gonna be retained in the existing building. And then I just have a question, to you, comment about the snow storage. I don't know if this is a possibility or not, but adjacent to where it's shown, the snow storage, is that paved retention pond. I know it's technically on the fire station property, but that was built for water retention of the training facility, which is gonna be raised and not needed. That, maybe some discussion could be had with the town, possibly using that for snow storage. It's a great place because it's a totally paved thing, so as soon as the sun comes out, all that stuff, all the snow would be melted. Just offering that as a suggestion.
Counter that a little bit. We are reusing that infiltration basin, so that's part of the stormwater reusing because the whole site was designed to drain down to that basin. So that is providing the infiltration for the site. We've added infiltration through the underground system. But we're not relying on just the existing stormwater system. We're providing additional treatment and everything else. So what I would say for snow removal, today, what likely happens is they push it all the way down past their own parking area and probably on top of their septic system, to be honest. So there's the availability to push it beyond the site if needed, and that can be, because this is sort of a common maintenance, right? We have to maintain access to this parking lot for the fire station itself. There's gonna be a collaboration of making sure that there's always accessibility down there, not just for the site, but also for the fire station itself. So there'll be a collaboration of where to put that snow. There's a significant area beyond that parking area to drop snow itself. So you've got not just this area here, which will drain back into the stormwater system, and this area here, which will drain back into the stormwater system, which is the preference for DEP, but also over on the other side, it would drain back into the stormwater system from the other side.
Mr. Chair, if we could just answer the first part of that question, the architect could answer some about the historic amenities or the historic features that are being kept in the front portion of the building.
Actually, not exactly what drawing to use, but the town farm itself, the layout as it is with all the smaller rooms and that, is primarily staying as it is. There's some minor modifications to get a fully accessible restroom by the office there. We're gonna restructure this back one-story wing because that's where we're imagining the food storage, so structurally that has to be reinforced. But the rooms in here, the mantles, the doors, that's intended to be refurbished and recall what it was, right? And keep that same look for people visiting in that regard. Again, in the L, there's a few areas where we're making the connection, but the other rooms are pretty much staying as they are. I mean, our goal is not to change it all. Our goal is to just modify in order to make the connection happen. But the existing stair up to the second floor, we'll be accommodating accessible. It doesn't meet the letter of the code right now, but we're not saying we're gonna tear out the stair and build something that meets it. We'll have a new stair in the addition and an elevator that can accommodate those kind of instances. As far as the exterior, the masonry will be restored, the granite lintels, I mean, it will look like it does today, only renewed and refreshed.
In the basement of the existing building, what are you gonna do with the 2 jail cells?
To be determined. What do you want to do with them?
When we toured the state through, I love to bring them down there, and I just said, if we don't get funded right away, this is where you're going to end up. However, we haven't incorporated that into our service plan yet, but.
And as of right now, they're not fully accessible, so I don't know. We're not going to put our residents down there.
But, having the conversations with the food pantry, we really want to make that area, because the public will be coming in to utilize the food pantry, to have it brought back as part of like a living museum and have the photos, have the area, like, just to bring it back to, like, to show people what it was and how important it was to the community, when it was being utilized for that.
And the balancing act we have is, we also want it to be comfortable. We also are dealing with a current energy code that says you're going to insulate to a certain level. So it's that dialogue we have with historic and, modern day comforts, whether it's parking or other, right? And we try to find a balance. We do it all the time in historic schools, whether we take trim off and then insulate that cavity and then put the trim back on. The goal is that it will look like it looks today.
Long answer is the short answer is we don't know what we're doing with the jail cells yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? This is your chance, boys.
The treatment plants at the
day school.
Day school, doesn't that treatment plant go to the Blanchard? Did they go to the Blanchard school? I didn't think they had a separate treatment plant.
So there's a shared wastewater treatment plant between the 2 schools.
Between the 2 schools, correct. So,
correct.
Has anybody engineered that treatment plant to handle? I see you have a 5,000 gallon a day pump station in there?
Yeah, so we're not anticipating the full 5,000, but there's a size difference, right? You go from 3,000 to whatever, up to 5,000 to allow for excess flow if something were to happen. But so like I said, during the RFP process, the town offered that option. Mm-hmm. We took them up on it. We've already reached out to DEP. The requirement is that the town permit it, and we will support their permit for the connection. And like I said, the wastewater treatment plants work better. I've worked on a bunch of them.
I'm well aware of how they work.
Yeah, they work much better when they have constant flow. The loss of flow during the summer makes them.
The leach field and the treatment plant.
There's excess capacity in the system.
There is.
Correct. We wouldn't have been offered it, and we wouldn't have taken it up if we didn't check that out during the RFP process. We actually asked that question.
You had to design a septic system for this 35 units.
No.
I said if you had to design a septic system.
How
many gallons a day would it have to take?
It would. It's 110 gallons per the 35 units. Plus, sorry, there's a calculation in there. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's around 4,000 gallons that we would have to do a septic system. And so it would be in the middle of the system, in the middle of the site where the stormwater system is. It would be likely a stepped system, pumped, dosing system, just not preferred. We have one at Helena Crocker, and it's just not the preference because it's in the middle of the area where we would prefer to infiltrate stormwater, or, you know, it just creates a confluence of just utilities in the way. So we felt that a stormwater system was a better enhancement, and then using the excess capacity allowed in the wastewater treatment plant.
Right. And this is the second time we've actually done it in town for the apartments that are at Stony Brook too. Over near those schools. We did another shared agreement with the school system for that pump station using the additional capacity for those units, and it actually works out a perfect process because, like Don pointed out.
Oh, I understand, they run
Yeah.
that all summer long, there's no.
Exactly.
Right.
So
But I don't want to see a problem where all of a sudden we're overflowing that.
Right.
That
No.
treatment plant, and it's costing the town millions of dollars
No.
to redo something.
No, because we have to still do the same process as if we were a private entity hooking up to that entity, up to that system, and go through DEP with the town to ensure that there's capacity and that our system is proper. And we'll go through that permitting process with Steve Cronin and the appropriate members of the school committee.
And one point to make is the Title V estimate is way overstated. We have a wastewater treatment system on another school down in Yarmouth, Simpkins. It was for 9,000 gallons per day. They see 3,000. It's just, there's low flow, everything. It's environmentally friendly. It just, people use a lot less water because of the codes that require that.
And just our population, I mean, single.
People don't take baths? What are you doing?
We're not gonna shower every day.
I was just gonna say, like, I was going through this calculation and I was trying to like explain like the need for more capacity, but you know, we don't have our seniors like all showering at the same time or taking showers every day. And you know, a lot of our seniors that are getting help and support, like they have someone who comes like twice or 3 times a week to help with their bathing. So they're not like, a lot of our residents are not, daily bathers.
But just back to Mr. Velcourt's point, we do have to go through that process. And that will have to be fully vetted before we got any money from the state. And we're trying to vet it out right now through DEP and with the town, so that it's not an issue later.
And that has to be, because like you're asking the question, and these people at the state are gonna be asking the same question. With the big spotlight and saying, you're not gonna get 1 penny until you can prove everything to us.
Right.
And, yeah.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note that we have a very strong letter of support from the Westford Council on Aging for this project. And also, we are looking selfishly for the board to take a couple of actions tonight. Some of it is just part of the process. One, we are asking for you to make a determination that the application is substantially complete. I think that given the fact that the engineering department, which again, thank them very much, during their busy season, they managed to get to this in time for your meeting. Given that they were able to complete their initial round of technical review, I think at least to the civil engineering aspect of it, they thought it was substantially complete. A cursory review of that did not indicate any deal breakers or major issues. A lot of it was clarification or things to do, in the normal course of a review process. So we are asking the board to first figure out if you think the application is substantially complete. That's an important part of this process. Secondly, we are also asking you tonight, given the applicant's tight time frame, is do you think that you need any outside third-party peer review services? The scope is very limited in what you can ask for, but we just want to make sure that you are comfortable with local in-house engineering review, which I think the comments are actually excellent. You have the architecturals in front of you. Do you think that you require any outside reviews? Because if so, in order to meet their deadline, we would have to know that tonight in order to put that together. So if there's something that you feel you need outside help with, it'd be great if you could say that tonight, or if you feel you have sufficient information, you like what you see in the architecturals, can you at least indicate that you don't believe you need outside third-party review at this time?
The only thing that, it's not, I guess it doesn't pertain to the project, is that the traffic down there at certain times of the day, week, month, are crazy. Not that this project is going to add a ton of traffic, but I just think there's going to be more car trips than these traffic studies always baffle me. There's a number going in and a number coming out, but it doesn't equal the number that's there. I don't know how that works. But I just think that after talking to the food pantry today, you know, they get 300 trips a month. Well, that's a lot of trips for that one little area. So I don't know if we need to have a further traffic analysis done, or are we happy with what we have?
So if I could suggest something of that magnitude, I think that's something that perhaps if the applicant's team could just put together an opinion about the relative usage, that would be in a format that our engineering department could review. That's certainly well within, you know, like the simple scoping.
Yeah.
We're not talking about signalization,
No.
or we're talking about, you want a sanity check, that there's not gonna be conflict.
Well, because of the environment. Between the school buses and the mill and everything else that goes on down there, the school itself, you know, in the AM and the PM, you know, no one rides the bus, everybody's mother drives them today, so.
Would it be helpful if the applicant, they manage a number of other properties? Maybe it'd be helpful if we had a limited information from that, like, these are the number of occupants, here's the number of vehicles that are actually there,
Yes.
and the number of non-resident traffic that they get. in
Yeah,
those circumstances.
no, something like that, just because, I mean, yes, you say that it's gonna be only 0.6 cars per unit, but, you know, tonight you've talked about caregivers coming in. Well, there's another car. And if you get 10 people coming in getting caregiving, well, there's 10 cars.
But can I share something?
Yeah.
So the awesome thing about what we do is we're actually because most people are income eligible for services. So instead of having, like in the good old days, like Mary would have Jane who would come, or Margaret would have Bob who would come, we actually employ, you know, we actually bundle all those people up. So if someone gets 1.5 hours, we bring someone in who's there 40 hours a week, one person. And they float through the whole building. So we don't have someone coming in, like 10 people coming in for 1 hour, overlapping, 10 people trying to get to the washing machine at once. They're actually doing all the grocery shopping, you know, so they kind of like, you know, economies of scale. We bring them in there and we can make good use of them, which is cool.
And I can say, Mr. Chair, we can, that report that Jeff is talking about, just a general ITA count, what we generally have for vehicles on other sites, we can easily put that together. But I will tell you, the benefit of this type of project is that we will not be impacting those intersections at peak hours. So the hours I go through there to drive to Blanchard School from Forge Village Road on a daily basis, twice a day, the residents coming out of that building or the services going into that building would not be during that time frame. So we won't be affecting the heavy traffic time, which is generally speaking 7:15 to 8 on the weekdays, and then again at 1:15 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So just to that point, we won't be impacting it then. Or when the school buses are traveling at the same time. Sorry, Mr. Earl, go ahead.
I don't know, do you have a comparable food pantry that we could look at?
So
Chelmsford?
We could look at Chelmsford, but this is, I just want to share with you, like, our desire to do this food pantry and to make this space available to the food pantry comes with, you know, a certain responsibility. We're going to be the landlord. We're going to have to execute a contract, an agreement with the food pantry. And if there are certain conditions that, you know, this board feels concerned about, then we're going to incorporate that into our contract with them. That if it's the operating hours are only going to be allowed from, you know, 9 a.m. to, you know, X, we can incorporate those things. Right. Because this is going to be a state-of-the-art location. They're not going to be going up and down the stairs as they have been before. But we can't have the Wild West out there, open, you know, all hours of the day. We have to have a reasonable setup. So I want to say it's not carte blanche that they can have, you know, open 80 hours a week. There may be a schedule that we have to implement to meet the requirements of this board.
What is your expectation they'll be open?
What is their expectations?
Yours. I know what theirs is. What's yours?
Well, no, whenever the largest need is, like, it's there for a purpose.
So they're only open 2 days a week now.
Yeah.
They'd like to go to 3, maybe 4. So I would hate to stunt their growth because of need, because we can't park the cars.
Well, you know, I think these are all things that I want to be able to work out with them and say, these are our restrictions as far as the number of parking spots we have. If you have to park over at the senior center and, you know, buddy up and get picked up and dropped off, you know, then that's what has to happen. because we can't jeopardize, the primary purpose for this site is to provide senior housing, to restore historic building, and then provide an added benefit of the food pantry and a modern space, to have open public space. It has to be done within specific parameters, and the important thing for me to hear tonight was to also hear your concerns, because when I hear what the town's concerns are, I can start creating and formulating a plan for what that lease is gonna say.
I'm sorry. Is the food pantry restricted to Westford residents only, or not?
No.
It's whoever?
We don't run it, but it's not, they never ask. I know in Chelmsford, we have people from Westford that come to Chelmsford because we're open different days. And, when people run out of, at least we say it, when they run out of diapers or food, they're gonna look for the nearest food pantry they can go that's gonna be open so they can get food on their table. And I've never seen the Chelmsford,
But because we take food from the Merrimack Valley Food Bank and other state agencies, we're required to take applicants that qualify from other towns.
Can you come up to the microphone and tell us who you are? We
Yep.
know who you are, but we'd like
I
to
am.
know on TV.
I'm Nancy Cook, 25 North Main. I'm the chair of the Council on Aging. I'm also the chair of the Housing Authority. So 2 points. The food pantry now operates in Cameron, which does have no parking. And we manage those 300 trips a week by staggering the food pantry hours. Ken would love to have it open every day, to have people shop without it being a crush of 120 cars coming in at night for their food, which would slow it down. It's crazy when you see the people come in for the food pantry at Cameron. Again, we have no parking at Cameron. The parking at Tadmouth Road, we just kind of did a half study. We have about 69% of our residents have cars at Tadmouth, and we're at about 88% in Graniteville, but that's because we have 6 family housing units in Graniteville that have multiple cars in the housings. Neither of the projects that we administer have full 100% cars. Most of the people take the bus that we offer from Cameron for all the activities. So the same will be seen when they come to Town Farm. We'll be busing them to Cameron for activities and busing them back, hopefully.
Can we bathe them?
We can bathe them while they're up there because we're fixing a bathroom. Thank you.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So, sorry.
Jeff?
Maybe you could just ask for a aggressive desired schedule from the pantry folks, and then when you gather some information from 2 or 3 of your other facilities, you can take that parking utilization information, and add it to their, and tell them be greedy and aggressive for their schedule, and just have benefit of all that information when this board next looks at this, perhaps.
Excellent.
And see if there's still the same concerns, or maybe they're mitigated.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just add a point to Jeff's first question to this board of whether this application is sufficiently complete? I will tell you that this application meets every standard of the zoning bylaw. There was 4 exceptions I asked for. I know I said I was going to go through waivers, and I won't go through them quickly, but I only asked for 4 waivers from your zoning bylaw requirements. One was not to give you a final list of waivers because those changed throughout the process, so we'll give you a final list of waivers at the end. The second was not to have to give you all handicap access documentation until building permits because they won't be ready till then. The third was not to have to inventory every open space in town to show you where the good open space is, which is still a requirement of your comprehensive permit. And the final one was not to go through every waiver and tell you why not allowing this waiver would make it uneconomic. Those were the only 4 waivers I requested. Other than that, the application fulfills every requirement by the town of Westford.
We do believe the application is sufficiently complete. We just want to be in a position, while the hearing is still open, to make sure that we're looking down the road that all the major issues will be addressed by your comprehensive permit decision once issued. We just want to avoid potential consequences is all.
So would you like us to vote on that fact?
We'd like for you to make a determination that the application is sufficiently complete.
By vote or by me
By
saying-
vote would be great.
So can we have a motion to determine that this application is sufficiently complete?
I move, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Very much.
Anything else on your side, Jeff or Joe?
No, sir, I think there's a little bit of homework on the part of the applicant. We're gonna still have some offline conversations about waivers, and I think you can turn this around in time for the November meeting, especially given your schedule. I think that's for the best. So that would
I would say so.
November 15th meeting?
Yes.
Can we have it before the 15th? The review?
Have the review before?
Yeah, in our hands so we can take it.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's the other thing is that, we were handed, the packet that you provided that we voted was sufficiently complete. But then, all the engineering came in today and all the
Yes.
other stuff came in today. Some of us work, we don't have a time to read our email all day long, so.
Yeah, we don't want to go through engineering today. We'd like to go through that with engineering. We're not in a place to review that either. But to Mr. Chair's point and Mr. Brickler's point, we will have that in well in advance so that you can look at the traffic information and the other responses prior to the meeting. I know you like to have that at
But
least a
we
week
get
in
cranky
advance.
if it shows up after the Friday.
Understood. We will have it in time.
Okay.
Yes, and it's important for us to keep this moving for obvious purposes, so we'll make sure we get our homework done.
Okay. All right, the board have anything else? Okay. So can we have a motion to continue this to November 15th?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll see
Thank
you
you very
November
much.
15th.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.
We need to move forward. We're clearing everybody behind us. They have no.
This is mine. Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
You want mine? Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good to see you. You already got it.
I should have disclosed.
Yes, you got it.
Say Jeff is gone.
Thank you again.
No problem. Very well.
The attorney said I should have disclosed she's my daughter also, but
We might have known that.
might have known that.
We
right.
might have known
I
that.
kind of figured.
Some of us are blow-ins, but we still understand some of that stuff.
Take care, guys.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Nancy.
Everybody look at the meeting schedule. Any hiccups that we see there? At this point, we all shake our head and go, no, everything's
We'll
fine.
figure it out later.
What were we thinking? How could it be on that day?
How do you pronounce them?
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth is the, what time?
How do you pronounce some of these?
Juneteenth is the biggest, I guess, hiccup, since it falls specifically on the day of your typical meeting date. So we could either look at one of the Wednesdays that are highlighted there, or we could look at maybe the Thursday, the day after,
Are you guys off that day?
typically.
Okay, so yes, so let's pick another day in June when you guys are not Juneteenth in it.
I don't know if you have a preference for a separate Wednesday or for the Thursday after, or
How does the board feel?
Juneteenth?
So the town hall's closed that day.
Right,
So
right.
we have to pick another day.
Yeah.
You want to go a different Wednesday, or you want to go Thursday?
Day
or
before or the day, which, I don't know what the
Day before or
preference
day
is for.
after?
We can figure it.
Who meets on Tuesdays, anybody?
select board, but that'll be the third Tuesday, so they wouldn't meet that one.
If you want, we could just come up with a suggested date and we'll throw it in your packet, and if you want to change it in the future, you can change it.
Yeah, you guys figure it out to your advantage.
Yeah.
Great. We'll cancel the meeting.
Maybe a mulligan.
You never know.
Maybe a mulligan day.
Maybe a mulligan. Any other correspondence, reports, or updates?
Nope.
No, sir.
Okay.
Unless you want to provide an update about MCMAC, that you're very actively involved.
MCMAC is moving along. I didn't attend the last meeting, but it's pretty comprehensive in the fact that we're creating a zone, let's call it, zones within town, mostly on 110, to have this MBTA affordable housing plan go forward. And in creating it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we'll have it in place. We'll have all the rules and regulations in place. And then if someone wants to come in and submit an application to do the same kind of housing, then they know what they're dealing with. And according, there may be some interest in some parcels already, I'm told.
Oh, there are, yes. Two are public, the Neshoba Valley Ski Area.
Yep.
And Technology, Tech Park East.
Tech Park East, yeah, so, the Tech Park East area is one of the areas that we're kind of looking at to do what they call a downtown area, where you have housing and maybe some commercial stuff along with it, and walking areas, and so, there's a big one down in Burlington. I don't know if anybody's seen it or not. These guys went down and toured it, right?
We did, yes.
Yeah, and, or how about, has anybody been out to Salem, New Hampshire to, what's the name of the place
The
out
old
there?
Rockingham Park place?
Yeah, with the old Rockingham Park. That's one that they've built out there. It's still going on. There's housing, hotels, and, commercial space and everything.
It's not similar to what, do you want to do at IBM in Middleton?
That probably will be something like that.
Probably, yeah.
maybe. Yeah, something like that.
Hasn't fully got that.
But, there's an affordable component there, so that's kind of the goal of this whole thing. So we'll see.
Back at the beginning, we started this conversation. There was some inquiry about whether we'd get any credit, that 924, 28, wherever it is.
924.
Credit for existing units that have been built out over the past, all of the units that have been built over the past decade. Wasn't that at the inception of this?
So
a possibility that we would have that number diminished by some other factor?
So
that didn't happen?
So there are some who have opined, not us, but there are some who have opined out there across the state that 40Bs, if they, existing developed 40Bs, if they end up in, say, this overlay, that there's a question, would you lose them as counting on your subsidized housing inventory? And so that alone made the committee say, forget it, we don't want to deal with that, take them out of the overlay. Even if it makes the area look a little silly and not as, contiguous, take it out, we don't even want to have that worry or debate, and we don't want to undermine our SHI. So they came out. So, so that's what that is.
Okay. And how about is this legislation still in?
Yeah.
Wasn't Holden, some other community suing the state over this thing? Is that?
So there are still
any live practice to that?
There's still some holdouts, not as many as there once were. There's still some holdouts, but there's no, I'll say, resolution yet. The only thing the state has said is that if you don't meet the mandate by the deadline, not only you're not eligible for certain types of funding, but there will be consequences.
Yeah, subject.
So it's not just you don't get something, there will be consequences.
Penalties, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to come up with options where this is because of the mandate, but we're also saying kind of throw the mandate out, forget the math, and just say, look at the areas and what makes good sense for Westford long-term. And if you can justify each of the areas that ultimately might make it, to town meeting for the question, even if the number's higher, if you get something out of it that's good for the town, then maybe think about doing it, even if you end up over your numbers. Because some of these projects, they're not going to, like, let's take Tech Park East. That would probably be a gradual, slow thing, because, they've got some leases that are for many years, and they could juggle some of their tenants around as spaces free up. People are looking for less office space, even if they keep it. One project there could, that could buy them a lot of time. They wait and see how that does. What are the changing trends in the market? They would probably do more of a slow master plan for that. Whereas Neshoba Valley Ski Area, that would generate a lot of new growth. That might have some more change up front, maybe be good tax-wise, and maybe it would cement the commercial recreation. That's more of an initial gain, and then, a second phase they're contemplating, if that makes it into the overlay and town meeting approves it. So that you'd realize more things faster, whereas Tech Park East would be a more gradual thing over a longer period of time, which we think there are advantages to both. We don't necessarily want to have all this change happen at once. It's probably good and healthy to have those changes happen as, a project or development might evolve over time to meet the changing needs. So, and there's a lot of things in between too. So, but yeah, there are definitely had a number, aside from the two that are public, we've definitely had, I'd say at least 4 others that people, they're watching to see what Westford and other communities do. They're watching to see what the advisory committee does, and they're eager to see what ultimately goes before town meeting, and then, of course, what town meeting does with it, so. It's interesting.
That's the annual town meeting? This will be the annual?
We are trying to bring it to the March town meeting, because we don't want to wait to the last town meeting before the deadline, because if town meeting hates it, and we need to make changes or, do something, we still want to have a reasonable amount of time to make those changes and bring it back before the deadline.
Yeah. Okay.
Buy more clickers. What a.
Couldn't help you so adjourn.
Couldn't help you so good. I just say buy more clickers tomorrow.
Can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.